What's up, world? I'm Cameron McKinney, and this is Pop Culture Spotlight, a podcast about the movies highest to lowest. Here's a quick synopsis. When a famous music producer and executive, David King, is the victim of a kidnapping mix-up, he must decide whether or not to pay the ransom. The film stars Denzel Washington, Jeffrey Wright, A$AP Rocky, Michael Potts, Ilfanesh Hadera, John Douglas Thompson, LaChance, Audrey Joseph, and Elijah Wright. Standout performances. Highest to lowest is the fifth collaboration between actor Denzel Washington and director Spike Lee. The others include 1990's Mo Better Blues, where Washington plays Bleak, a jazz player who loses his ability to play right as he's starting to find success. This one has become an underrated classic. It has Denzel with a young Wesley Snipes. The second film for the two was 1992's Malcolm X, with Denzel, of course, playing the titular Malcolm X. It's a big 3-hour historical epic. It's the movie most think Denzel Washington should have won his second Oscar for, but alas, he lost to Al Pacino for Scent of a Woman. Their third collaboration is my personal favorite, 1998's He Got Game, where Denzel plays Jake Shuttlesworth, a man who had been in prison for 6 years for accidentally killing his wife. He's released for a small window of time to try to convince his son Jesus, a star basketball player, to go and play for Big State. The dynamic between Denzel Washington and co-star Ray Allen is electric in this movie. It is one of my all-time favorite sports movies. And their last before highest to lowest was 2006's Inside Man, where Washington is co-starring with a star-studded cast that includes Clive Owen, Jodie Foster, Christopher Plummer, Willem Dafoe, and Chiwetel Ejiofor. Worth noting, it's the highest-grossing movie of Spike Lee's entire career, making over $184 million. That gets us to highest to lowest, and of the four prior Spike Denzel movies for me, it has the most in common with He Got Game. Denzel in it is playing David King, a strict parent who comes across as a tad selfish. He Got Game is far and away a more extreme situation, but in both movies, Denzel is testing his own likability as a movie star. He somehow gets you to feel empathy for the character, and morally, he gets you on his side. No actor, and I mean absolutely no actor, has been on a better run recently than Jeffrey Wright. Since 2021, he's been in The French Dispatch, giving the best performance in that movie. He returned to play Felix Leiter in No Time to Die, both in 2021. In 22, he played Jim Gordon in The Batman. In 23, he was in Asteroid City, Rustin, and American Fiction, giving the best performance of his career, and for it got his first ever Oscar nomination. And this year in 2025, he has his third Wes Anderson movie with The Phoenician Scheme and his first film with Spike Lee. The movie I'm talking about today, highest to lowest, playing a concerned father, Paul. He gives my favorite performance of the movie. He's there to contrast with Denzel's character. No one takes him seriously because of his past and unfortunately his bank account. And finally, this is most likely going to be the first time for most seeing rapper A$AP Rocky in a movie. And if that is the case, I recommend you go back and watch him in the movies Dope and Monster. He's proven himself to be a good supporting actor. In highest to lowest, he plays a rapper who has a cult following but is not yet mainstream, named Young Felon. I don't want to give too much away about the character, but A$AP Rocky makes for a good villain for this movie. I did not pay much attention to Spike Lee growing up. He was not at the height of his powers for much of my youth, but then he had a resurgence with BlacKkKlansman, a movie I love, and from there I've gone back to watch most of his filmography, And it's interesting because you have the movies that are cemented as classics, Do the Right Thing and Malcolm X. Those two are movies that as soon as they appeared were treated as monumental. Then you have movies whose reputations have only grown over time, like He Got Game and 25th Hour, my favorite Ed Norton movie. It also has great performances from the likes of the late great Philip Seymour Hoffman, Barry Pepper, Brian Cox, and Rosario Dawson, who is also brilliant in He Got Game. Then in his filmography, you also have underrated movies like School Days, a very ambitious film with a great performance from Lawrence Fishburne, and Jungle Fever, which has great turns from both Wesley Snipes and Samuel L. Jackson. Spike Lee's last film prior to Highest to Lowest was Da 5 Bloods, which has, in my opinion, the best performance given in a Spike Lee movie by Delroy Lindo. It will never not be crazy to me that he was not nominated for an Oscar for that performance. So where are we exactly right now with Spike Lee? I mean, this is his second straight film for a streaming service. Da 5 Bloods was on Netflix, and now Highest to Lowest is on Apple TV+. Some people like myself view him as one of the great directors working today, and I treat it like a big deal whenever he makes a new movie. And then there are others who view him in this movie as a bit of an afterthought. Let's get into the movie Highest to Lowest. One of the best things about it is how Spike Lee once again showcases New York. I really enjoyed the look of this film. What is the movie about in simple terms is that people of status and stature are treated far differently than people without, even if they are in the exact same situations. One could also say it's about a man losing himself along the way and not doing things for the right reason. The biggest critique I've heard about this movie is that it's a bit of a slow burn, and I find that to be kind of insane. I think the bare minimum of what you're getting from a Spike Lee movie is entertainment. You're also watching a Spike Lee movie that stars Denzel Washington. This movie, whatever you want to say it is not boring. And I'll talk about this when I get to the ending. I think this is a movie that is really trying to build towards something. Like the momentum is building and building and building until you finally get there. But getting there is the whole point of the movie. I think it's fair to say that this has not been one of the most talked about movies, and that has to do with the fact that there was some confusion surrounding the fact that this is a streaming only movie. Apple at first said that it would be in theaters for a few weeks and then pushed to Apple TV Plus, but then they backtracked to just Apple TV Plus, and it's wild to think about that in the last 2 years, Apple has had streaming-only movies starring George Clooney and Brad Pitt with Wolves and Denzel Washington in Highest to Lowest. It's curious to see someone not try to have a hit starring major movie stars. I mean, look at what Apple just did with F1. I mean, all of that movie's success has to do with the fact that it stars Brad Pitt, and the audience has a history of watching Brad Pitt movies. And you can say the exact same thing about one Denzel Washington. When he is in a movie, the masses want to see it. I'm not saying Highest to Lowest was going to make $100 million in movie theaters, but could it make 50? Could you turn a profit? I don't know the answer, but I think it was worth taking a shot. Especially in the last few weeks when there's been virtually no competition in movie theaters. I mean, there's no other movie that's dominating the zeitgeist. This could have been the one, per se. People would have talked about it more if it were in movie theaters. I think it would have been a somewhat of a success. How big of one is up for debate. Spike Lee has a following. I mean, people care about his movies. Like, I get it if the competition was some big superhero movie and then you decided, oh, we're not going to beat that movie, so let's just put it on Apple TV Plus. I just don't understand understand the reasoning behind this only being on Apple TV Plus. They should have done what they did with F1. See what the audiences would have done with this movie in movie theaters. See if it would have gotten people to go see it. And then you can backtrack from there. The history of Denzel Washington tells you that people want to see this guy's movies in a movie theater. It's that simple. Oscar chances. When talking about Denzel Washington, one can never overlook the chance he gets nominated for an Oscar for any performance. He's been nominated 9 times. However, last year it did feel like a sure thing that he would get nominated and possibly win for Gladiator 2, and neither of those two things happened. And I'm going to go on record and say I do not believe he is going to get nominated for his performance in Highest to Lowest. It's not one of the best performances of his career. It's not even one of his best in a Spike Lee movie. He was better in Malcolm X, obviously. He was better in He Got Game. I personally think he was better in Mo Better Blues. The performance from this movie that I'd like to see get an Oscar nomination comes from Jeffrey Wright. Now, do I think he's going to get nominated? No, it's not very likely. Spike Lee has only been nominated for Best Director once in his career, and it was for BlacKkKlansman. He's not going to for this, and there's just not enough buzz for this movie overall for it to get a Best Picture nomination, nor do I think it really deserves one anyway. That does not in any way mean that I think this is a bad movie. I think this is a very good movie, not a great one. I just don't necessarily believe that it measures up to my favorite of Spike Lee's filmography or my favorite films starring Denzel Washington. What I was really curious about watching this movie is how a younger audience member would react to seeing this film, because there are points in this movie where Denzel is very critical of his son for being on the phone. Like, it feels kind of preachy in a way that I think a lot of people could find annoying. Like, really? We need this older male character telling us we are spending too much time on our phone? And that's kind of where I'm at with this movie. I don't really know how Spike Lee feels about the character of David King. I do think he's critical of the character and sees him as somebody who is out of touch. I just don't know. When it comes to his films with Denzel Washington, it seems like the director always finds a redeeming quality with these characters, and I'm just not sure what's all that redeeming about David King. I mean, ultimately, he ends up doing the right thing, but not for the right reasons. For me, the best part of the film Highest to Lowest was the ending and the final confrontation between Denzel's King and A$AP Rocky's Young Felon. I won't spoil the moment. All I will say is it's about a man thinking he's finally going to get respect from his idol. And yes, in that moment, you do see real growth from the character of David King. Like, at the beginning of the movie, he might have made a vastly different decision than the one he makes at the end of the movie. I do think this movie works best when it's commenting on the music industry more so than when it's a crime thriller. Like, the crime, I'm not all that interested in. But what does work is when this movie is a character study about this guy who's been on top of his field and is trying to remain relevant. And I do think that's what Spike Lee himself is most interested in viewing when it comes to this movie. I mean, at points in this movie, he's basically saying the character of David King has fallen out of love with the music, but wants to remain the head of his label so that he can remain the king. No pun intended. Father-son stuff works on and off throughout this movie. I think it works more with Jeffrey Wright and his own son, who is playing his son in this one. I did think this movie was going to be treated as more of a big deal because it is a reunion of Spike Lee and Denzel Washington. I've talked about their past work together. I think it's great. I think they're two of the best at their crafts, and they're coming back together to make a movie. That's a big deal. That's a movie that should be seen by most people. And right now, I have no idea how many people have seen this movie. What I haven't heard is that many people talk about this movie. I would even go as far as to say I feel like there are so many people who don't even know this film exists. And whose fault is that really? Is it Apple TV Plus? Is it the state of movies currently? Like I said before, Da 5 Bloods was on a streaming service. It was on Netflix. I feel like people really did talk about that movie in a bigger way than they're talking about Highest to Lowest. And so while I'm not walking away from this movie as one of its biggest champions, I am saying it deserves to be seen. It is a very good movie, and I think a mid-Spike Lee movie is better than most people's best film. I mean, if you need a reason to watch this movie, I mean, it could possibly end up being the final movie between Spike Lee and Denzel Washington. Who knows if they're going to make a sixth movie together, although if they do, I really hope it co-stars Denzel's son, John David Washington, who in my opinion gives the best performance of his career in Spike Lee's BlacKkKlansman. I do want to get into a little bit more about the state of Denzel's career. Like, he's at a point where he's openly talking about the fact that he only wants to work with great filmmakers. I mean, recently he's worked with Joel Cohen, he's worked with Ridley Scott again, he's again working with Spike Lee. There's all this talk that he's going to work with Ryan Coogler on Black Panther 3. At 70 years old, to come to this revelation that he only wants to work with the best directors is odd, because most people come to that way early in their career. I mean, Tom Cruise was doing that at the beginning of his career, seeking the best directors. Leonardo DiCaprio has been doing that throughout his entire career. And yes, the list of who we want Denzel to work with is obvious. Paul Thomas Anderson, Christopher Nolan. It would be phenomenal to see Denzel Washington in the final film written and directed by Quentin Tarantino. I said this when talking about Brad Pitt after F1. I think that that is a guy who still wants to be a movie star, and the same goes for Denzel Washington. I think he wants to work with these great filmmakers because he's still coveting Oscars. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, and he wants to be in great movies. I even think more so than working with great directors, I want to see him work with other great actors. I mean, there are very few times where this guy has been paired with other legit movie stars. There was Tom Hanks, of course, in Philadelphia, Julia Roberts in The Pelican Brief. I mean, can I get a Denzel Washington movie with Brad Pitt, George Clooney? Name the movie star. I want to see him work with him. Can I get a Paul Thomas Anderson film that has Denzel Washington paired with Leonardo DiCaprio? I am pumped that Denzel has an upcoming film, Here Comes the Flood, in which he will co-star with Robert Pattinson and Daisy Edgar Jones. That's something that Denzel has not done enough of, being the senior statesman in a movie with two rising stars. That is something that the past great movie stars have done. Paul Newman's done it. Gene Hackman did it. It's time for Denzel to make those kinds of movies. Be in a film with Timothée Chalamet. Pass the torch. As for Spike Lee, I still think he's one of the best directors working today. When he makes a movie, I need to see it. I know he's viewed as a legend, but I still don't think he gets enough credit for being as good as he is. He's consistent and he makes really good, entertaining movies. Movies that you want to rewatch. And those who think it's all about the early part of his career are wrong. I really do love BlacKkKlansman and Da 5 Bloods and really did enjoy the film Highest to Lowest. And yes, as of this moment, I view Highest to Lowest as mid-Spike Lee, but I've only seen the film once. Who knows, it may grow in my own estimation as the years go by. I just think when you're thinking about the movies made by Spike Lee and Denzel Washington, the standards are really high, and with good reason. This is the duo who made the masterpiece face that is Malcolm X. And if you've listened to this podcast and think that I have overhyped He Got Game, do yourself a favor and go back and watch that movie. It is an all-timer. It's my favorite movie from Spike Lee and has my favorite performance from one of the all-time greats, Denzel Washington. Thanks for listening to this edition of Pop Culture Spotlight. I'm Cameron McKinney, and there'll be a new episode of the podcast every Thursday on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I recommend you check out Highest to Lowest. Next week on the podcast, I'm talking about Ron Howard's Eden, starring Jude Law, Vanessa Kirby, Daniel Bruhl, Sydney Sweeney, and Ana de Armas. So tune into that and please rate, review, and subscribe.